Okay, I'm just going to record this then and I'll share the screen. That's the right one. Come on in, come on in, come on in. Right. For those of you who are watching this on screen, apologies, I hope you can sort of vaguely see me, vaguely see the screen. And watching. Thank you for those of you who are in here as well. I'm sorry it's a little bit hot. Hopefully you can all hear me. So this is our safeguarding trainings annual update. You'll be pleased to know this is a 3-hour training. If anyone asks you. Hi, sorry.
I'll move now.
Okay, a 3-hour training if anyone asks. No, I mean it is officially supposed to be 3 hours, but I'm hoping we managed at St Nick's. I managed to get it into 45 minutes. So, and the thing is that I know that most of you have done this before, and for those of you who haven't, I think it is fairly. Sorry, I've just got people coming into the room. Sorry, I'll just let them in. Okay. For those of you who haven't done it before, it is hopefully quite straightforward, but also really, really important what we're doing here. So let's just get that off the screen.
Does the big window open or the window?
I don't know. Is it not open now?
I don't think so. Is it open?
Right. Sorry to everyone on the screen.
I can't do it.
I think it does open. Just for anyone that's watching, we've got around about what 25 people in here in this tiny little room. That's it. Perfect. So it is a bit warm in here.
Yeah, you need to put something in there to keep it pegged down. Yeah, it's not very nice.
It'll just get a bit of breeze through. That's fine. That should be fine. Okay, so I'm gonna move forward. So this, so Joan Ball, there's a load of contact details in this. Now everyone's done it at the end of the day. I'll forward these slides through to people after. But just the first thing that's really important to say is that everybody just needs to be aware that at some point in their lives, 1 in 5 adults probably experience some kind of abuse in childhood. So obviously, if this is sensitive or difficult for anyone, just do take a bit of a break at any time. It's not the easiest subject to be talking about. There's a list of the things there that we are focusing on today in the course. So most important things, well, I mean, it's all important, but knowing what our individual safeguarding responsibilities are, making sure that we promote children's welfare, knowing the signs and indicators of abuse, knowing what our local child protection procedures are, and I'm also going to share about what happens when you refer as well today. Being really clear about sharing information and what to share with other people, and being confident to deal with child protection issues. So this is the definition of safeguarding, promoting the welfare of children. So it's protecting children from maltreatment, preventing impairment of health and development, making sure that children are growing up in circumstances consistent with provision of safe and effective care, and taking action to enable that all children have the best outcomes. And those are from Keeping Children Safe in Education 2023. Now that is a document that is really important, and all school staff have a responsibility to read section 1 of Keeping Children Safe in Education. We can print some copies out and put them in the staff room and things like that, but it is a legal responsibility on us to have read that. Almost everything, I think everything within what I'm talking about today is taken from Keeping Children Safe in Education. So in theory, if you've done this course, you know what is in that part 1 anyway. So in terms of, why it's not showing me that on the screen and knocking off the top, it's a bit annoying. Let me see if I can just minimize that a little bit. And I don't know, we can't seem to get rid of the other bit, but at least I've got some bits off my screen. So responsibilities for safeguarding children. It is everyone's responsibility. Okay, but in particular, these groups, and in particular us, I think, as schools, because we're finding that in West Berkshire, particularly at the moment, that the picture on safeguarding is it's difficult. There's been a significant increase in cases over the last year or so, and because of that, social workers are under increasing amounts of pressure, which means that we are the people who see these children on a day-to-day basis, and so therefore we need to be the ones that are making sure that we are keeping children safe, and we're doing whatever we can, and shouting loudly for children, because that's important. We need to be the ones that stand up for our children. But at the end of the day, it is everybody's responsibility. Now, these are some high-profile cases that have been in the news over many years, and these aren't particularly recent nowadays. Victoria Columbier, Lauren Wright, that were sort of early 2000s. Peter Connolly, relatively recently, a few years ago, and Holly and Jessica was sort of about 2006-ish, I think, something along those lines. But all of these cases were terrible cases that of abuse in children that led to legislation that was put in place. So the reason that we're sitting here in this room today, all of us having the safeguarding training, I think was because it was either Victoria Columbier or Lauren Wright that led to all staff in schools having to have that training. But all sorts of other legislation has come out because of them. The sad thing is that it doesn't stop. Okay, it's only a couple of weeks ago that we heard about Lucy Letby, and abuse in children still continues, and I think that's really important to know. And sadly, we some of us have had to deal with some of these really serious things ourselves. And these are cases. Every time a serious incident happens, there is a serious case review, and common themes that come out: lack of strategic management, not putting doing the right things, not putting the welfare of the child first, not sharing in a timely way, and complacency. And I think sadly that we're still seeing, not here necessarily in school, but sometimes when we approach different services, we're still seeing some of these things coming out, and sometimes a over willingness to accept sometimes the parents' views with things rather than knowing what's right for the child. And I think we have to be really careful and make sure that we're putting children first in things. So this is our statutory duty. Okay, so we have a statutory duty in law to promote to safeguard and promote the welfare of children, and to have regard to guidance issued by the Secretary of State. And that guidance is that document, Keeping Children Safe in Education, Part 1, is the guidance issued by the Secretary of State. Okay, so that's what we have to have regard to. And all that I'm talking about here is that guidance. Okay, there it is, Keeping Children Safe in Education 2023. That was published for just updated for 2023 from September. There's also other bits: working together to safeguard children, what to do if you're worried a child's being abused. Those are more sort of guides that are useful if you need to. If you sort of come across a case and you're not quite sure what to do, you might go to what to do if you're worried a child's being abused, for example, those sorts of things. So some of the things that are in Keeping Children Safe in Education. So it talks about what we need to know, types of abuse and neglect, what early help we can provide for children, how we report concerns. And I'm going to just reiterate and say this many times in this meeting today, that the way that we report concerns at St John's and St Nick's is CPOMS, and I think that's really important. Talks about children missing from education. That's much more on that in this time's Keeping Children Safe in Education. So this is where children are regularly absent or just disappear and nobody knows where they are. Mental health, child sexual exploitation and child criminal exploitation, female genital mutilation, preventing from radicalisation, child-on-child abuse, which we'll talk about later, and serious violence. All of those things are part of the state safeguarding that we need to be mindful of when we're talking and thinking about children. One of the new things that is in this Keeping Children Safe in Education this time is about filtering and monitoring. This is to do with the internet specifically, and it's about making sure that we have got filtering and monitoring systems in place so that the internet in school is safe. Now, we've got an IT provider, and I've worked with them to make sure they've shown me that they've got certain categories of website that are filtered out. Show me what those categories are. Obvious things like pornography and things like that, but I think also it goes sort of further: violence, political stuff, some political stuff, and there's a wide variety, extreme views, all sorts of things like that are filtered out. But that's not to say that we won't ever have something coming up on our system that is not right. And it's really important that if you come across anything that isn't, that is not right on the internet in school, then you let myself, Heather, Nicola know, and we will contact our IT providers immediately. I don't think that's something that we can report through CPOMs because of the nature of it. So probably that is a come and talk to us one, but that's something just to make sure that we are aware of. But we all have responsibility with that. Just let you know, there are online child protection procedures. So those procedures are the Berkshire West Safeguarding Children's Board, and I think all of our computers at St John's and St Nick's have a direct link to that. But if you can't find it, it's Berkshire West Direct Safeguarding Children's Board. You can find it with a Google search. It's not that difficult. And the procedures will be there. And even if you found some other local authorities procedures, they wouldn't be that different anyway. So it's going to be fine. You'll find the right thing. Information sharing. So this is where it gets to be really important. This is where we start the important stuff, because obviously GDPR is in place to protect people's data. And GDPR prevents us from sharing data about someone without their knowledge, but we are able to share information share information on children if any of these three things is in place. So if either we have informed consent, so for example, if a child discloses something to us and we then speak to their parents and say, so-and-so has said this to me, I need to let Children's Services know about this, then that's one of the things that we can do. So that's informed consent. Second one is if we have reasonable cause to believe that a child is suffering or at risk of suffering significant harm. In that situation, we don't need to talk to the children's parents. And in fact, we're advised not to speak to children's parents in that situation and to phone Children's Services directly. So if we have reasonable cause to believe that a child is suffering or at risk of suffering significant harm. And thirdly, and I don't think I've ever had to deal with this one, but if disclosure is required under a court order, but I don't think I've ever had that. So confidentiality, obviously we want to be as confidential as we can to children. They have the right to confidentiality, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't share information if they're at risk of harm. Test, as it says there, does the person have any legitimate involvement or role in dealing with the issue? Basically, we share with people who need to know. Okay. So anyone that needs to know, we should talk about a suspicion or allegation of abuse, but other people, they don't need to know. And I think that's really important, that there will be things that different people in school know that we're not able to share with others. And I think that's really important, that it's not that we don't want to share with you, it's just that we have a legal duty of confidentiality to the child. And obviously safeguarding concerns shouldn't be workplace gossip. I think that's really important. So then we come on to the definition of abuse. And this definition has got rather bigger in the several years since Keeping Children Safe in Education has been around. In fact, I think possibly the first sentence was probably the first definition that it came up with. Abuse is a form of maltreatment of a child. And then this next bit has sort of been added significantly over time. So it may abuse or neglect a child by inflicting harm, by failing to prevent harm. Children may be abused in a family or in an institution or community setting, by those known to them, or more rarely by others. Abuse can take place wholly online, or technology can be used to facilitate offline abuse. Children may be abused by an adult or adults, or by another child or children. I mean, it's quite a big definition, a really big definition, but we need to be very aware that abuse can happen in many different ways, in many different forms, in many different situations. These are the four main types of abuse that we deal with. I'm not going to go into massive detail on any of these, but I don't know why that one seems to come up in the middle. I'm not quite sure why, but that's so 2021, 50,900 children in England subject to a child protection plan. Not sure what seems to come up in the middle of the things, that one, I don't know why. But anyway, so physical abuse. So physical abuse is probably in some ways the easiest one to spot, I think, maybe, because it can, you know, there are physical signs on a child that it has happened potentially. So hitting, shaking, throwing, poisoning, burning, scalding, drowning, suffocating, but also fabricating symptoms of an illness or deliberately inducing illness in a child. So all of those things would be classed as physical abuse. And obviously, as I say, they're the most likely to be seen if they happen. However, emotional harm is probably in some ways the most difficult to identify. So this is persistent emotional maltreatment of a child. And if you read through the information on that, I find in some ways this is the hardest one to deal with, because it's that you know, conveying that they're worthless, inadequate, not giving them an opportunity to express their views, making fun of what they say, hearing the ill treatment of another. So children who are witnessing domestic abuse may be considered to have suffered emotional harm themselves. That's part of it. And then sexual harm, again, you know, I think fairly obvious what it is. Very, very serious, as all of these are. Obviously, it might be physical contact, but it could also be non-contact activities, such as production of sexual images, encouraging children to behave in sexually inappropriate ways, grooming. Also, female genital mutilation can happen, and I think we come on to a little bit about that later on. And it's important to say that although men are the most likely to commit sexual abuse, women can also commit acts of sexual abuse as well. I think that's important just to say, as can other children. And then neglect is that failure to meet children's physical or psychological needs. And might not be, you know, as it says there, food, clothing, shelter, not protecting from harm, not giving adequate supervision, not giving medical care. So again, neglect and emotional abuse, very similar in some ways. So they're quite similar type of thing. But these are the this graph basically shows the different types of child protection plans, the reasons for them, and you can see that neglect is by far the biggest reason for child protection plans, followed by emotional abuse, then physical abuse, then sexual abuse, and then sort of multiple reasons. So here we go. This is another definition. So significant harm, the ill treatment or impairment of health and development. Okay, so that is significant harm, ill treatment or impairment of health and development. And if we feel that a child is suffering from or likely to suffer significant harm, then we should phone it through. We should obviously contact us through CPOMS, let us know, and hopefully we'll talk to Children's Services, the Contact Advice and Assessment Service, and they will run an assessment which might lead to a Section 47 inquiry. The difficulty is that there are no absolute criteria, and thresholds can change. Sometimes it can be one single violent episode, but more often, and this is where it becomes more difficult, is it's a combination of several things that have happened over time. And that's where the definition of at what point a child is suffering significant harm can be very difficult to judge. But abuse can have many impacts for children and for families over time. So can actually have physical or cognitive brain damage caused by abuse, academic failure. Children who've been abused more likely to be excluded or truants, might have poor self-esteem, destructive antisocial behavior, alcohol and drug abuse, self-harm or suicide. I mean, I don't think it's probably any surprise that those can be consequences of abuse, but also important to say that abusers, children who are abused, are more likely to become abusers themselves. In terms of who abuses children, well, it's not anyone. It could be anyone who has access to children. 90%, over 90% of cases, the abuser is someone known to the child, but they could come from a range of social backgrounds, may be just well-liked, well-trusted members of our society. Again, I bring back to Lucy Letby on that one, that she, you know, was completely trusted within the community, within the nursing community. Vast majority of abusers live in our communities, not known about, not convicted. All of these cases, some of these are local, some of them are national, but these were all people who have been convicted of abusing children at some point. You know, they just look like normal people, don't they, really? It's I mean, they are normal people, but who've done terrible things. We won't have a break, sorry. So what can we do? So in terms of early help, so early help is really, really important, because right from the start of school, right from the start of the time children are with us, we can sometimes identify children who may be struggling more for a variety of reasons. And it's our job to support and provide the support for those families, for those children, wherever we can. These are children who are more likely to need additional help, but also are more likely, without that additional help, to potentially suffer abuse in the future. So having been disabled or having additional needs, there's a slide about that in a minute. So you're being a young carer, so caring for brothers, sisters, parents, grandparents at home, being drawn into antisocial criminal behaviour, gang involvement. Unlikely at St John's, but you know, at year 5, year 6, that is possible that could happen. Going missing from education, at risk of modern slavery, trafficking or exploitation, unlikely for our children, but possible for our parents. I think that's really important to say. Also people who are at risk of being radicalised, again, the same with parents, but children who have a family member in prison or affected by parental offending, they can be more vulnerable. Drug and alcohol misuse within the family, adult mental health, domestic abuse issues. Children who are abusing drugs or alcohol themselves, again, that's unlikely for children at our age. So the bottom few are less likely with children of our age, but female genital mutilation I'll come across in a few minutes, and children persistently absent from education, that is one that we need to be very aware of, and to, you know, if we see children who are away for a lot, you know, make sure you flag it up to Heather, to Nicola, to me, so that we can keep an eye on those children. So this slide is the one I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. Someone just trying to come in there. This is basically the types of abuse and how. So the blue column are disabled people. The yellow column is people who are not disabled. And you can see significantly for all types of abuse, if you're disabled, you are more likely to be a victim of abuse. And I think that's quite stark, really. I think because I've let someone in, it's not letting me through. So in terms of creating a safe working culture here in our federation, the things we need to be aware of, it could happen here. And in fact, it has happened here. Okay. You know, all sorts, you know, of abuse have happened in schools that I've had to deal with, Heather's had to deal with, Nicola's had to deal with at different points. But also, you know, it could happen here. I think when it says that, it's probably talking about staff. And I think thinking that actually, you know, we don't need to be looking around ourselves judgmentally all the time, but aware that, you know, if you are feeling uncomfortable about something, about a member of staff or the way they're behaving, let me know. Okay. So we need to follow the staff code of contact. We need to use the whistleblowing policy, which we have. It's called Confidential Reporting Code. It's on our website. Listen to report all concerns from children. If you are concerned about a member of staff's behaviour, you need to let me know in that situation. So it's me that you need to let know in that situation. If you are concerned about my behaviour, you need to let the chair of governors know. Okay, so that's the way it goes in that situation. Things not to do are fairly obvious, but I will just go through a couple of these. Not giving your private details about your private life to children or contact details. Don't meet children outside work or invite them to your home. Obviously, I know that some of you are parents of children who are at school, and it's impossible to not meet, you know, children outside school because they are children's friends. But obviously, you need to just be aware of the fact that you're a school employee when you do those things. And then the obvious things, you know, provoking a child, using sarcastic language, engaging in sexual relationship, hitting, grabbing, slapping. Those things I think are fairly obvious, but worth sharing anyway. So appropriate contact and touch. So this is important, particularly at St John's. I think that you know, we can't. There's no way we're not going to be able to not touch children sometimes. And I think that that's important. We have to do that. You know, whether it's for reassurance or for you know, intimate care, those sorts of things. You know, we need to make. It does have to happen. We know that contact happens. But obviously, it's just being mindful yourself of making sure that that contact is appropriate, and I think that's the important thing. Some of these things have seemed to be in a strange order, but why don't children tell? I don't know. So often, you know, children are reluctant as to say if they are being abused, and there are a number of reasons. So feeling loyal to their family, guilt and shame, but actually, I've from what I've witnessed, children sometimes don't tell because their parents have said, if you tell, then you're going to be taken away from us. And I've actually, you know, on a few occasions I've been aware that that's happened. They're worried that their family members will be hurt, and I think particularly in things that are drug related, there are quite often threats from people elsewhere in the community, and that actually they are worried that their family members might be hurt. I think it's their own fault. They don't actually know what's happening is abusive, and that can be the case, that this is their normal life, this is what they live, and they're not aware, and also they don't trust anyone, or no one's listening, and it's just worth bearing in mind that the child who comes up and says something to you, you know, and you think, well, why me? And you know, they say it really quietly, and it might be that they've just about plucked up the courage, and you're the one person that they trust. So it's possible, you know, that's really important to make sure that we listen in those situations. But sometimes we don't listen, so that it doesn't happen here. You know, those people would never do anything like that. They might, you know, who knows? You know, it could be a next door neighbour, and you know, you've known them. You know, who knows? But we've got to listen to children. I think that's really important. Sometimes racism, stereotyping, that we might feel that by not live by you know, following something that we're being racist ourselves, or stereotyping by following through on something, not that we want to seek proof and evidence first. Also, all these sorts of things are important. But we need to listen, and that's really important. So key things when we're talking to children: make sure we reassure them that they're doing the right thing, thinking about about their age, emotional state, and so on. Listen carefully to what they're saying, and then record the event, so CPOMs, as soon as possible, where possible using the child's words that they actually use themselves. So that's really important, to try and actually remember exactly what the child said. Obviously, we don't want to be writing everything down when a child speaks to us, but trying to remember as soon as possible what the child actually said can be really important. And then we do need to say that, you know, we will have to pass the information on, but we'll only tell people who need to know. And then things not to do are fairly obvious there. But actually, one of the key ones there is to investigate, because actually it's not our job to investigate. That's the job of the social workers. And that's really important. Although sometimes they will come back and ask us to ask further questions, but that's their decision to do that at that point. And then, if we feel that the child or other children could be at risk in terms of this, we need to not rush to tell others, particularly the parents or carers in that situation. So, however, it is really, really important. I don't know if this comes up in another slide or not, but it is really important that obviously CPOMs is our way of informing. But if you are worried that a child is, you know, what a child is saying to you places them at risk of significant harm, then come and speak to Heather or me or Nicola as soon as you possibly can, because so sometimes you won't get to write in CPOMs until later in the day, but actually sometimes what a child is telling you is really important now, and we need to phone it through. And even when some of you in this room are aware of it, that, you know, we had a situation a few months ago where a child told us something at the beginning of the day, and even with that situation, it was gone home time by the time that in fact it was 7 o'clock in the evening by the time the situation was not resolved, but that social services had finished with that case and ready to move on. So we do need to make sure that that information is passed on as soon as possible. Oh, there we are. But I told you, I knew there would be a slide about it later. So you must record the concerns. You must talk about it with designated safeguarding lead. So our designated safeguarding lead at St John's, it is Heather. At St Nick's, it is Nicola. And we've got deputy designated safeguarding leads. So who are Isabel Stewart, Leslie O'Rourke, Katie Blakemore, myself, and is that it? I think there might be someone else that I haven't thought of. But there's a number of deputy designated safeguarding leads anyway. So don't delay, don't talk to parents, don't investigate, come and let the designated safeguarding lead know. Obviously, a lot of the time we do need to share things with parents, but it's for the designated safeguarding lead to make that decision. I think we've sort of covered this, but if the disclosure is about a colleague or head teacher or manager, well, if it's about a colleague, come to me. If it's about me, go to the chair of governors, who their email addresses are available in the office. So you don't need to say what it's for, just ask for their email address. So basically, if you're worried that someone who works with children has harmed or may have harmed a child, or any of these other things that are on here, that has to be reported to the local authority designated officer. That's the LADO. And that's my responsibility to do that, unless, as I say, it's about me. And this is whistleblowing. So obviously, again, if you pass concerns about a child to the designated safeguarding lead and they don't do anything, it is your responsibility to act. Obviously, you won't necessarily know they've done anything, so you might need to chase it up. But, you know, if you feel that you pass something on, no one's reacted to it, no one's replied, no one's come to talk to you about it, follow it up. So ask them again, perhaps, but also go through the whistleblowing procedures. And if you need to, you can call the Contact Advice and Assessment Service directly yourself. If you're really worried and you think, you know, no one's done anything about this, they've not listened to me, this child's in danger, do it yourself if you need to. Few slides now just about exploitation and abuse. So these are just some general information. So child sexual and criminal exploitation. I would hope that children at St John's are not, this is highly unlikely to happen to anyone at St John's, but I think it is possible for children in years 5 or 6, maybe at St Nick's. So child sexual and criminal exploitation. So an individual group takes advantage of an imbalance in power to coerce, manipulate, or deceive a child into taking part into sexual or criminal activity. So basically, they groom the child. They say, you know, they sort of befriend them. They give them things they want, often things like vapes and stuff like that. Maybe money, and then eventually that person then becomes, you know, they've beholden to them. I'm trying to think of the right word. That they then have to do what that other person's saying. That person is then coercing them into criminal activity or sexual activity. So that's what that is. Hopefully, that we'll never have that in either of our schools, but it's worth being aware of. Child-on-child abuse is likely to happen in our schools. So children can abuse other children. So it can happen inside school, can happen outside school, online. We need to be aware of indicators and signs of it, respond to any reports of it. You know, it is likely to be happening. Bullying happens. Bullying is a form of child-on-child abuse. And I think that's... in particular, I think sexual violence and sexual harassment are really important to make sure that we are dealing with straight away, and that can happen at any age. And I think that's really important to say that, you know, nursery children can be involved in sexual violence. Hopefully they wouldn't be, but it could happen. And sexual harassment, because it may be things that children are seeing outside of school that they are then playing out within school. So it is possible. In particular, though, and I think this definitely happens, it definitely happens at St Nick's. It sometimes, I think, happens with some of the older children at St John's, is things that can be and should be seen as sexual harassment. Things that you know, sort of laddish behaviour, I suppose you might call it. And in the past that might have been dismissed as banter, having a laugh, part of growing up, boys being boys, but it isn't acceptable. It is sexual harassment and we need to deal with it. And the earlier we deal with it in children's lives, the more likely we are to stop it, I would say. I think that's really important. So report it. If there is any of that sort of behaviour you come across, do report it, please. And that goes to the same sort of thing. So sexual harassment, it can be things like sort of sexist behaviour. It can be things like homophobic behaviour as well, transphobic behaviour, quite a variety of different things that children can say, and you know, we need to deal with it. It's not acceptable, and I mean, obviously this is unlikely to happen, but it says even if the victim and perpetrator are currently or were previously in a relationship. That's less likely to happen with children of our age than being in a relationship. So child and child abuse, so bullying, obviously it could well be. Abuse in intimate personal relationships, less likely at our age. Could be physical abuse, could be sexual violence, sexual harassment. All of those things I have had to deal with in the past at some point, it's worth saying. So it does happen. Less likely, though, for our age are some of these things. So causing someone to engage in sexual activity, consensual and non-consensual sharing of nudes, upskirting, and initiation type violence. Those are, I would say, I would hope, very unlikely to happen within our schools. We've got our behaviour policy. It's available on our website. Part of that is dealing with child on child abuse. There's a bullying section within that, including cyberbullying. I will just mention female genital mutilation as well. This is a serious form of abuse. So it basically relates to the procedures of partial or total removal of external genitalia or other injury to the female genital organs for non-medical reasons. And often where it happens, either religious or social or cultural reasons are given for it, but it is child abuse, it is dangerous, it is a criminal offence, and we have a statutory duty. So it says staff with a teaching responsibility and other professionals. I see that as meaning every member of staff at the school. Statutory legal duty to report to the police any disclosure that FGM appears to have been carried out to a girl under 18. So if we think that has happened, we need to report that to the police, not to children's services. That's the only one we report to the police. Prevent duty, this is about radicalisation, preventing children from radicalisation. It's more likely with the age of our children that it is their parents that may be radicalised in terms of potentially far-right extremism or Islamic extremism or whatever. But the idea of the prevent duty is to stop children from being drawn into terrorism. Again, it's less likely with children of our age, but we do need to be aware of it. I won't go into too much on that one. Domestic abuse. So these are just a few details here. So according to Women's Aid, at least 750,000 children have witnessed domestic abuse. So there's again, I will forward these slides at the end, but there is a website, a link to Berkshire Women's Aid and telephone number for them if anyone needs to contact them directly. And it's worth saying as well that, again, that men can also be the victim of domestic abuse as well. And there is a special project for male survivors as well. And again, there's a link for that. Online abuse. Sorry, there's an awful lot here. I'm so sorry. So making sure that we are aware of online abuse. Within our PSHE and computing lessons, we teach about online abuse. We teach about being safe online, and we use that website thinkyounknow.co.uk in both schools to help children to be aware of how that can happen. But I would say the most common thing I've come across in recent years is children on WhatsApp groups and abuse happening through that. So you know, So we're talking about bullying, I suppose, happening on that, where children either being deliberately ignored, left out of WhatsApp groups, or where other friends are talking about them, all sorts of things, but it does seem to happen. So we're coming towards the end. So the question is whether you feel confident you can identify concerns, know who to report those concerns to. That's Heather here, it's Nicola at St John's, or the deputy designated leads. Know how to access and follow policies and procedures. They're all on our website. Know how and when to share information appropriately, and that is CPOMs. I'll say it again, CPOMs, really important.
What about those of us who don't have access to CPOMs? So some of us here are.
Yeah, so if you come across something you don't have access to CPOMs, come and speak to Heather or Nicola in that situation. Yeah. And keeping confidentiality. There's a whole load of links for online training, which you're welcome to do if you want to. A lot of links. A lot of links. These are the links for support and things as well. But I just wanted to share at the end the West Berkshire situation, because it is and what happens when something is referred. So just thought I'd just spend a few minutes. This isn't on the official slides. I've added this on myself. But West Berkshire over the last year has seen a significant increase in referrals, to the point at which I saw a graph a couple of months ago that showed that West Berkshire is an outlier authority. So it has got significantly more referrals, child protection cases, child in need cases than any of the other local authorities nearby, significantly more. Nobody seems to know why, but that is the case. Which is basically putting a lot of pressure on children's services, which means that they are struggling to keep up with things, which means that our duty as schools is even more important, I think. And I have had to, on a number of occasions this last year, I've had to go to social workers, managers to say, I don't think enough is being done for this child. We need to do more. And I'm worried that this child's not safe. And it's our duty. We are, as I said earlier, the front line of services for the schools. We have to make sure that we are supporting children as best we possibly can. So after the referral, so if someone comes and tells me something, then I will phone the contact advice and assessment service, and the person on the end of the phone it'll be a duty social worker. They will talk to their manager, and between the two of them, they will make a decision as to whether it meets threshold. If it meets threshold, then a strategy meeting or a strat meeting will be held. Now, strat meeting is basically a meeting of professionals. So the social worker, normally school, maybe GP, maybe police, variety of professionals. A decision is then made whether to proceed to a Section 47 assessment, which is a child protection assessment. So the assessment is done over a period of time. That includes parenting assessment, seeing the children, talking to parents, all sorts of things. And then the decision is made then on whether to move to child protection. If something's not deemed significant enough for it to be child protection, it will become child in need, which is a non-statutory system, but it's similar to child protection, but it's not statutory. Child protection is statutory. Parents have to follow what's in child protection. So if things go to child protection, it starts with an initial child protection conference where reports are given by professionals. So it'll be the school, it will be health, it will be maybe midwives or health visitors, housing, police, drugs workers, variety of professionals, a social worker, obviously. It will have an independent chair, and a decision will be made at that meeting about whether the threshold has been met. And that decision is made by all of the professionals that are in the meeting. So everyone will be asked whether they feel it meets the threshold for significant harm to the child. And a decision is made based on that. Following a child protection conference, there are core group meetings. So those are every 6 weeks that sort of look at the child protection plan and follow up and see whether any progress is being made. And then I think it's 3 months later for the first one, and I think 6 months afterwards is review child protection conference, where the targets are monitored, and again a decision is made as to whether it should remain as child protection or whether it should go down to child in need. During the period that child's subject to child protection, there'll be announced visits and unannounced visits from social worker to the family home. And obviously it's a statutory duty on the parents to follow the targets that are being laid out. And there's an expectation on services such as the school to continue to provide support. So often a lot of our children who are accessing ELSA support, for example, are children, not all, but some of whom are children who are on child protection or child in need plans. If the child protection plan is not working, then the local authority has to make a decision whether they need to escalate further, and that is where they go to PLO, which I think stands for Public Law Order, I think, which is then someone know what it stands for. So
It's something like before you go to court, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
pre-court.
yeah, I don't know, but it's so basically, yeah, so it's legal proceedings anyway, and that is where it's sort of it's almost another layer of child protection. But if it goes to PLO, then it means that local authority is potentially working towards removing the child from the house in that situation. Okay, and I think that's it. So that's everything within it. I don't know how long I've taken, hopefully not too long. I know it's hot in this room, 45 minutes by the looks of it, so that's pretty good. I'm not quite sure how anyone gets it into 3 hours.
You've got a lot of breaks. Probably.
You've got a couple of messages in the chat.
Oh yeah, there are. Yeah, let me just see. It might just be that they can't hear me or something. Okay, perfect. Yep, I can have a look and see. So I think that's pretty much it, unless anyone's got any questions. Anyone in here with a question? Clive?
What CPOMS mean?
Yeah, CPOMS basically stands for Child Protection Online Management Service, and it's an online reporting tool basically that staff are using to report any concerns that they've got.
So we
about child.
escalate that to the lead, and that person then completes the CPOMS documentation.
No, so basically any member of staff does the CPOMS form. So I think pretty much every member of staff knows what CPOMS is and how to use it, and any concern. So it's not just about safeguarding. We use CPOMS for medical and for behaviour as well. But so that all comes up, and what it does is it then provides a picture on a child for us. So can be so, because sometimes behaviour can be a symptom of abuse as well. So actually you can often get quite a big clear picture of a child.
So as a reader and or governor on a day trip, that is escalated to the teacher.
So yes, you would let the teacher or a member of staff know, and they would put it onto
So that's their
CPOMS.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's public law outline.
There we go. Thank you. I knew it was public law. Okay. Thank you very much. I can't see any questions from anyone on the screen. So I think I'm going to stop recording and we'll stop it there. So thank you very much, everyone.